my family left me out of the vacation group chat. We thought you couldn't afford it, said my sister. I booked the same resort's presidential suite. When they saw me poolside. It was a Tuesday morning, the kind where the sun's too bright for your mood and the coffee doesn't quite hit. I was between calls, flipping through Instagram like it owed me something when I saw it. A group photo, freshly posted. They were all there, my sister Julie front and center, grinning like she owned the airline, my parents flanking her, my cousins and their kids all squeezed into the frame at gate 17B. Luggage everywhere. Hashtag slung under the photo like confetti. Hashtag family trip. Hashtag ocean bliss resort. Hashtag time to unwind. Ocean bliss. The name rang a bell. I blinked. My thumb hovered over the photo, then slid down to another post, this one from my cousin Jordan. Same gate. Same smiles. Different caption. Can't wait for drinks on the beach. Let's go. I wasn't in the picture. Hell, I hadn't even heard of the trip. There was no invite. No text. No mention. Not even a pity-forwarded itinerary. I'd always known I was the quiet one, the one who stayed late at work while the rest of the family lit up the group chat with memes and birthday reminders. But still, this hit different. I scrolled through 3 more posts, each a little more tone-deaf than the last. Then I paused on a boomerang of Julie clinking her champagne flute with someone off camera. Her caption? We earned this. We? I stared at that word like it was a riddle. Because as far as I knew, I hadn't earned a single beach chair. Maybe it was a mistake. A miscommunication. Maybe they figured I was too busy with work. But deep down, I already knew the truth. And I wasn't wrong. I waited an hour before calling Julie. Enough time to make sure she'd landed, maybe even dropped her bags in the room. She picked up on the 3rd ring, voice bright and airy like someone already on their 2nd mojito. Hey! What's up? I didn't waste time. Where are you? She paused. The resort? Ocean bliss. Why? You didn't think to tell me? A beat of silence. Then a sharp laugh. Oh my God, is that what this is about? I didn't answer. Julie sighed. Look, don't take it personally. We just figured you wouldn't be able to come. I stared out the window of my apartment, the Seattle drizzle streaking the glass. Why would you think that? Because, she said, as if it were obvious. You're always saying no to trips. Back in college, you skipped Mom's birthday cruise. And when we all went to Cancun, you couldn't swing it, remember? That was 10 years ago, I said slowly. I was broke. Not anymore. Another pause. Yeah, but you're always so low-key. You live in that tiny place. You drive a Honda. I like the Honda. I mean, no judgment, she added quickly. We just didn't want to pressure you. It's expensive, and well, we thought you'd feel bad if you had to say no again. Right. Because leaving me out entirely is way better than offering and letting me decide. I make 6 figures, Julie, I said flatly. You know I work in tech. I'm not bragging, I just didn't realize you thought I was still 22 and eating instant noodles. She didn't respond to that. I could hear seagulls screeching in the background, someone calling room service. No hard feelings, okay? She said finally. Just enjoy your week off. Take some time to relax. And that was it. No apology. No invite. Just a patronizing pat on the head through a phone line. The call ended, but I was already opening my laptop. If they thought I couldn't afford it, well, they were about to find out just how wrong they were. I didn't sleep much that night. I lay there, staring at the ceiling of my quiet apartment, replaying Julie's voice in my head. We figured you couldn't afford it. It wasn't just condescending, it was dismissive. Like I didn't matter enough to even ask. Like I was a background character in their beach montage. By morning, I had made up my mind. Ocean Bliss Resort. 5 stars. Private beachfront. Multiple pools. And yes, 1 presidential suite. I found it within 5 minutes on their website. Top floor. Ocean view. Personal concierge. Private pool. Butler service. It cost more than the family's entire trip combined. I booked it. Full week. Paid in full. But I wasn't done. I called the resort and spoke to a manager named Elaine. Her voice had the smooth polish of someone used to high-end clientele. "I'd like to arrive a day early," I told her. "And I'd appreciate it if your staff knew who I was. I'm hoping to make an impression." She laughed softly. "Mr. Blake, I think we can accommodate that." That evening, I packed carefully. Light linen shirts. Tailored swimwear. My quiet, minimalist wardrobe was traded out for things with just enough edge. Subtle designer logos. A Rolex my coworkers didn't even know I owned. And a pair of aviator shades I'd saved for no reason. Now I had one. When I arrived the next afternoon, the Bell staff greeted me by name before I even reached the check-in desk. Elaine met me in the lobby with a complimentary cocktail and walked me to the suite personally. And when those double doors opened, it was like stepping into a movie. Floor-to-ceiling windows. Infinity pool on the balcony. The scent of ocean and eucalyptus in the air. I didn't say much. Just nodded, smiled, and tipped generously. Then I unpacked, poured a drink, and waited for morning. Because tomorrow my family would arrive. And I'd be waiting, poolside. I woke up before sunrise the next morning, not out of nerves, but something closer to curiosity. The suite's balcony overlooked the central resort path, the one every guest had to walk if they were checking in through the main lobby. I sipped my espresso, robe tied loose at the waist, and waited like I was watching a premiere. At 9:07 a.m., they arrived. I spotted Julie first, in a bright orange sundress and oversized sunglasses, dragging 2 roller bags behind her. My parents were right behind, followed by my cousin Jordan and his wife, both weighed down with beach totes. Their excitement was unmistakable, laughing, pointing at the palm trees, clearly expecting the week of their lives. Then came the moment. As they walked along the central path, passing beneath my balcony, I stood from my lounger and stepped into full view. No rush. No fanfare. Just me, aviators on, cocktail in hand, linen shirt open just enough to show the edge of the gold chain I rarely wore. "Julie!" I called, voice casual. She stopped cold. My mom, who had been mid-sentence, turned and spotted me next. Her sunglasses slid down her nose. My dad muttered something I couldn't hear. Jordan elbowed his wife and whispered like he'd seen a ghost. "Hey guys," I said with a nod, raising my glass slightly. "Welcome." Julie blinked up at me, her mouth parted just enough to confirm that yes, this was absolutely not in her script. What are you doing here?" "Vacation," I said. "Thought I'd treat myself." The butler, Elijah, who already knew how to time a scene, appeared beside me with another drink. I handed off my empty glass and said, "Bring this one to the suite, would you?" "Of course, Mr. Blake," he replied with a slight bow. Julie looked like she had been hit with a light breeze and a hard truth all at once. My mom finally broke the silence. "You're staying here?" "Presidential suite," I said. "Ocean view. Private pool. All the bells and whistles." Julie finally managed a stiff smile. "You didn't say you were coming." I shrugged. "Neither did you." The moment froze in time. My mother still hadn't lifted her sunglasses back into place. My father was squinting like maybe if he looked hard enough, I'd vanish into mist. And Julie just stood there, eyes locked on the butler retreating with my drink like he was the problem. I gave them a friendly 2-finger salute, and stepped back inside, sliding the glass door shut behind me like a curtain falling on the first act. Let them stew. I didn't hear from them for the rest of that day. And I didn't seek them out either. Instead, I let the suite work its magic. That evening, as the resort filled with the smell of salt water and grilled seafood, I walked through the main restaurant with calm purpose. I wore a crisp white linen shirt, sleeves cuffed, and light slacks, just polished enough to make people look twice, just subtle enough that no one could call it bragging. A couple at the bar complimented my watch. I bought them a round of drinks. The bartender recognized me from earlier and asked how the suite was treating me. I told him it was paradise, and he laughed, saying, "We don't get many guests who tip like you." "I like being remembered," I said. The next day, I hosted a private dinner on the suite's terrace. The butler helped arrange it, string lights, a private chef, 6 hand-picked courses, the works. But I didn't invite my family. I invited the couple from the bar. 2 other solo travelers I'd met by the spa. A retired teacher and her husband from Boston who had complimented my book on the beach. Strangers, but kind, curious ones. We talked about travel, food, awkward childhoods. At one point, someone asked me if I was here with family. I smiled. "They're here," I said, swirling my wine. "But I don't think we're on the same vacation." The following morning, I finally ran into Julie again, accidentally, or so she claimed. She and Jordan were walking toward the pool when I came up the path from the spa. She stopped abruptly and said, "So, you really did all this just to make a point?" I raised an eyebrow. "What point would that be?" She flinched slightly. "That you have money." I laughed. Not mockingly, but with genuine disbelief. "Julie, I've had money. I just didn't think I needed to prove anything to you." "Then why this?" she asked, gesturing vaguely at me, the clothes, the calm, the casual dominance I wasn't trying to exert but somehow was. "Because I wanted to enjoy my week. And because you assumed I couldn't afford it." "That's not what I meant," she said quickly. I let the silence fill in the blanks she couldn't. Julie bit her lip, like she wanted to say more, maybe even apologize, but all she managed was, "You've changed." I met her eyes. "No. You just never bothered to look." After that run-in with Julie, the dynamic shifted. Not just between us, but across the entire family. I didn't need to hear them whispering behind buffet trays or pretending not to glance my way during afternoon yoga sessions. The awkwardness followed them around like a forgotten sunburn, just tender enough to wince when touched. By now, word had clearly spread. I'd become the story. Cousin Jordan stopped me by the towel stand the next morning. "Hey man," he said, trying too hard to sound casual. "Presidential suite, huh? Must be nice." I smiled. "It is. You just booked it on a whim." "I like the view," I said, looking past him to the horizon. He gave me a weak thumbs up and wandered off like someone who just remembered they left the oven on back in their standard suite. Later that afternoon, I was lounging in my private pool when I noticed my mom hovering near the stone path below my balcony. She was pretending to take photos of the landscaping, like she didn't know exactly where I was. After the 3rd snap, I waved. She startled, then waved back sheepishly. A minute later, she was gone. But the real surprise came that evening. I had another dinner planned, this one simpler. Still on the suite terrace, still catered, but fewer guests. Just me and 3 travelers I'd befriended during a beachside wine tasting. I had no idea they'd turn out to be the most entertaining people I'd met all year. A pastry chef from San Diego, her brother who worked in publishing, and a solo backpacker from Vermont with an encyclopedic knowledge of obscure jazz. Midway through the 2nd course, I saw them. Julie. My parents. Jordan. All walking toward the edge of the private terrace space. Hesitant. Half hopeful. They didn't say anything. Just watched. Julie folded her arms. My mom bit her lip. My dad adjusted his collar like someone not used to being outside of his comfort zone. I held their gaze for a moment, then turned back to my guests. "Dessert's coming," I said. "Don't go anywhere." And just like that, I closed the door behind me. No invitation. No performance. Just presence. 2 days passed. 2 blissfully detached, cocktail-soaked ocean breeze days. I snorkeled. I read. I tipped generously. And when I saw a family member? I smiled like I was greeting a stranger in an elevator, polite, but distant. Julie didn't try again. Not directly. But that evening, just before sunset, my mom found me by the edge of the infinity pool, a soft coral sky bleeding into the water like watercolor. She sat in the lounger next to mine, clasping her hands in her lap like she was prepping for a confession. She didn't speak for a while. Then, "You look happy." "I am," She nodded. You've done well for yourself. We just didn't realize. That much is clear. Her lips pressed into a thin line. Julie didn't mean to leave you out. I let that sit for a moment. She told me you all thought I couldn't afford it. She said that? She blinked, as if she hadn't rehearsed the defense. I didn't answer. The silence was its own verdict. She looked down at her hands. We just thought you were too busy. You never come to family stuff. You always say you're working. I do work, I said calm. Because I wasn't born with a safety net. And I've never expected one. She looked like she wanted to protest, but instead, she sighed. It's different seeing you here. Like this. That's because you're seeing me for the first time, I said quietly. Not the version of me you boxed up a decade ago. She nodded. Slowly. Then, as if reaching for an olive branch, she asked, Will you come by our room tonight? We're doing a family dinner. I gave her a gentle smile. I already have plans. Hosting again. Oh. Her voice faltered. Maybe tomorrow? I turned my face back to the ocean. Maybe. And I meant it. Because maybe wasn't no. But it also wasn't yes. It was a boundary. And for the first time, I could tell she knew it. The next evening arrived thick with salt air and tension. The family had gathered for dinner at the resort's beachside grill, a casual affair with tiki torches, mismatched chairs, and a steel drum musician playing tourist-approved reggae covers. I passed them on my way to the terrace, dressed in a navy blazer over a crisp shirt, casual but unmistakably elevated. Julie stood up when she saw me. Hey, she called. Can we talk? I glanced at the group. My father looked away. My mom smiled tightly. A few cousins perked up, like they were watching a reality show finally getting juicy. I approached slowly, hands in my pockets, no urgency in my steps. Julie stepped closer. Listen, she began, voice softer than I'd ever heard it. I've been thinking. About everything. I waited. I guess I didn't realize how off it was. What we did. Not inviting you. You didn't forget me. I said. You made a decision. When you thought I wouldn't challenge. She winced. I honestly thought you wouldn't care. I tilted my head. That's the part that stings the most. Julie nodded, swallowing hard. You were always so private, so careful. We thought you didn't want to come to stuff like this. Wanting to come and being treated like I shouldn't bother, those are different things. She looked down at her drink, her voice barely above the waves. You made your point, okay? With the suite. The butler. All of it. That wasn't the point. I said. It was just the first time I lived like someone who didn't need to ask for a seat at the table. She looked up again, eyes glassy. So, what now? I smiled. It wasn't cruel. It wasn't smug. It was quiet and surgical. Don't worry, I said. I could afford it. Then I turned and walked off, back to my terrace, where my final dinner was already underway. The sun dipped low as I raised a glass with my new friends. The chef brought out a seafood tower. The butler poured champagne. And beneath us, the rest of my family sat at plastic tables, chewing over fish tacos and the realization that they'd never really known me. That night, I tipped the staff like royalty. Not out of spite. Out of respect. I thanked every person who'd remembered my name, who'd seen me without assumptions. And early the next morning I checked out. I didn't tell anyone I was leaving. I let them wake up to an empty suite and the memory of me, unbothered, unapologetic, and finally seen. The suite was quiet the morning I left. Not in the cold, lonely way, more like the hush of a stage after the curtain falls. The air still carried the scent of eucalyptus from last night's towels, and the glasses on the terrace table held the ghost of clinking laughter. The staff had already begun preparing the room for its next occupant. But for a brief moment, it was still mine. I stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, watching the waves draw lines across the sand like they were trying to write something only I could read. My luggage sat neatly packed by the door. No mess. No drama. Just closure. Elijah, the butler, met me in the foyer with his usual calm professionalism. "Car is ready, Mr. Blake." "Thank you," I said, shaking his hand. "And thank you for the way you handled everything this week. You didn't just do your job, you made this experience unforgettable." He smiled, genuinely, warmly. "It was our pleasure. Honestly, we don't see many people like you come through." I chuckled. Quiet tech guys with something to prove? "No," he said, shaking his head. "People who don't need to say much to be heard." That stayed with me. Down at the valet stand, I handed out envelopes to everyone who had gone out of their way for me. The bellhop who remembered my coffee order. The concierge who helped me find rare books in town. Even the housekeeper who left a handwritten note folded with the towels that read, "You seem like someone who doesn't get enough kindness. Hope this week was good to you." I tipped well. Not because I wanted to be remembered, but because they had reminded me that respect doesn't come from bloodlines. It comes from being seen. I was halfway into the car when I saw them. Julie, our mom, and Jordan were standing just off the walkway near the breakfast pavilion. They hadn't spotted me yet. Julie was holding her phone, showing something to Jordan, who shook his head. My mother looked older. Like the sun had been harsher on her than usual. Like the realization of what had happened was still rippling out inside her. And for a fleeting second, I wondered what they were saying. If they were trying to justify it still. If they were talking about me in past tense, as if I was already slipping out of their narrative. But I didn't approach. I didn't wave. I let the car door close. As we pulled away, I turned to watch the resort fade behind me, palms swaying, guests milling, the white stucco of the presidential suite just visible above the trees. They had underestimated me. And I hadn't yelled. I hadn't begged. I hadn't stooped. But they'd remember this trip. Not for the beaches. Not for the cocktails. They'd remember it for the moment they realized they no longer had the power to define me. I didn't post a single photo from the trip. No captions. No hashtags. No, look what you missed. Because this wasn't about revenge, it was about reclamation. For years I let them tell the story of who I was. The broke brother. The quiet one. The guy who probably couldn't afford it. Now? They'd think twice before speaking for me again. I don't need an apology. I don't need them to grovel. But I left behind something far more lasting than words: silence. The kind of silence that follows someone who never made a scene, but changed everything by simply showing up.